Welcome to the Two Marketing Moms podcast. I'm Kelly Callahan Poe, and today's episode is called Resumes for New Grads, What Works? Joining me is Amy Adler. Amy is the president of Five Strengths Career Transition Experts, specializing in resumes and career portfolio development. She's a certified master resume writer and nationally certified online profile expert, as well as a former Toast of the Resume Industry award winner and current judge. Thank you for joining me, Amy.
Hello, thank you so much for having me today.
So today's topic is really relevant right now for rising juniors in college who are rushing to get resumes for summer internships next summer, and for those new grads that are getting ready to join the job market. Your expertise is in resume development for C-suite executives, right?
Correct, but I have worked with students as young as high school.
So is creating a resume for a new grad just as challenging as it is for a C-suite executive?
Sometimes it can be even more difficult because we're working with students who don't have the life experience of talking about their accomplishments in the way that somebody with a 20 or 30-year career might have. And it's up to us as resume writers to help students figure out what is the core of what they bring to a future internship or a future first employer, and convey that so that it feels authentic to them as a young kid and helps the audience understand exactly what they need to know about the person to bring them on.
So initially, especially for new grads or interns, it's all about showcasing your skills, right? And so how do you help them unearth their skills, their accomplishments, even from part-time jobs or internships or campus activities? Do you have a process that you go through, or what do you recommend that new grads take for an approach to do this?
It's a good question. So showcasing the skills in the context of the thing that they did is really important. So let's say somebody worked at a grocery store. There's so much to running a register or working in the warehouse element or stocking shelves that speaks to teamwork and customer service and technical expertise. And I don't think any future employer of a junior in college is going to expect the universe from somebody at that level. They're going to want to know that you have verve, that you have energy, that you have a quick ability to learn new things, and that you bring certain skills to the table. And if we're talking about something, let's say more in a marketing realm, if somebody's had other roles that might be relevant, maybe they've worked in their school or in clubs, in volunteer work, these skills then, with respect to marketing, can become the centerpiece for somebody's messaging with respect to their future first job or their internship.
So what common mistakes do you see in entry-level resumes that instantly turn off employers and recruiters, and how can students avoid them?
So I can't speak for every recruiter and every employer. That's certainly not possible, but I can say that really common practices that students engage in that can be elevated include figuring out how to tell the story well. So if a student is simply saying, I did this thing, that's true. And there's no question that they're telling the truth. But there's so much more that the person can say. And the model that we use to tell those stories is the CAR model. It's the challenge, action, result. Although we actually tell the story on a resume with result, challenge, action. So the CAR, challenge, action, result, is chronological. I was faced with this problem. I did something, and here's what happened. And again, you're in college or you're in your first job. So these don't have to be the kinds of things that a senior executive, maybe your boss, would be doing. But let's say you helped your boss with something. Let's say you figured out something that they needed to know, or you built something that helped them do their job better, that persisted after you left. You can tell that story in this way, that you were faced with a challenge, meaning your boss told you to do something, because that's probably how it's going to go.
Yeah.
You did something, you built something, or you researched something, or you made a list of something. And the result was somebody benefited from your work. And telling the story that way tells not only what skills you had, but how well you engage those skills for a good outcome.
The CAR method is a really easy way for people to remember. So I appreciate that analogy. One of the other challenges that obviously recruiters and employers are dealing with is AI. And when is it smart to use AI in developing your resume, and when does it become obvious that you're leaning on it too much? And you might even have some personal stories that you've heard about from recruiters who have seen AI in practice that you might want to share.
I do, in fact. So I think the most obvious implementation of AI, and perhaps the worst, is for somebody to take a job posting and tell ChatGPT or any one of the other tools to build a resume from it. It won't be you. Not only will it invent things that you've never done before, it will be so bland as to look like every other resume that was produced in the exact same way. So I would categorically come down on the side of not doing that. Um, Somewhere in the middle, between completely writing it yourself and using the help of ChatGPT, or again, one of the other ones, is to take a small portion of the text and say, did I say this right? Is this impactful? What am I missing? What else could I say here? So you're not asking it to tell the story for you, because it doesn't know any more about you than you've already told it, but it might prompt you to think of other details that will enhance the story. I think that's legitimate. Um, One of the stories I can tell from talking to, it was one that comes to mind is a CEO of a digital marketing agency, actually. And they do lots of other things, but something along those lines too. They were hiring for a writer, and they got cover letters that looked identical from a handful of applicants. And it was clear they had done exactly what I said not to do, which is to take the job posting and throw it in to one of the LLMs and say, build me whatever, in this case, it was cover letter. They got identical cover letters. Nothing about the person, nothing new about the person who was applying. And of course, this was for a writing role, so there was some element of irony as well. Um, so uh, the person posted on LinkedIn, and I immediately reached out, not because I was applying for the position, but because I wanted to know more about this. And we had a whole conversation around this, and it sparked a lively discussion that I think has kind of legs. People keep talking about this sort of thing. And not only because the information that comes out of it is so genericized as to not pertain to any one person. It has again the liability of making stuff up about you that doesn't exist. And I
Yeah.
think so a liability of the online tools that say they will send your resume to, 100 or 300 or 1,000 job postings. It'll make stuff up that you can't speak to when you get into that interview. So just be careful. Just really, really careful about what you do. I will say, however, when somebody gets into an interview and they know what they've already passed the resume vetting stage because they're going to the interview, taking that job posting and asking for questions that might come up in the interview is stellar preparation. And I 100% would stand behind that. You have to be careful, obviously, because you don't want it to be so far afield that it's asking for things that don't pertain to you, especially as an intern, because you're an intern. Um, but you might be able to research more questions about the company or about yourself that you didn't think of before.
When you and I chatted in preparation for our podcast, you said that resume writing is really about good writing and good questioning, not filling in the blanks. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Thank you. And I appreciate the reminder. So I've been writing resumes for 16 years and writing and editing professionally for more than 30 years now. Um, so for me, the writing part it's what I do. It's the skill that I have learned over many years. As a resume writer, asking questions, for me to ask questions is the key to getting the stuff to write about. And if I'm not asking the right questions, if I'm not interrogating the data set that is someone's background, I'm not doing my job well. And I think if somebody is thinking about applying to an internship or their first job or whatever it might be, engaging in that kind of exploration and being willing to ask themselves the hard questions about where they're really good and where they are um, ready to shine and what skills they still need to develop. That kind of introspection is extraordinarily valuable. And I think it will unearth the kinds of stories that should show up on a resume, those small business cases that are those challenge, action, result statements that impress people who are reading because they say you know exactly what you're talking about. And if they ask you about it, you could probably give way more deeper details.
So I'd love to take that one step further, that resume is not just about good writing and good questioning. It's also about storytelling, because ultimately you're going to take that information that's on the page and you're going to need to tell that story in 30 seconds or less about what it is that you had on the page. Right. So when you're writing these points on your resume, you have to think about what is the story that you're going to tell to personalize it and demonstrate your impact in a way that's meaningful and quick and to the point, right?
It's so true. And rambling never served anybody. So practicing these stories, well, when I had my first interviews when I was, in my first jobs, I'm sure I fell into that trap. And this is, of course, long before I was in this kind of role that I am now. So I speak from sort of a point of embarrassment where I've done the exact same thing. And I've learned over the years that being concise, as you say, is the key, and getting to the punchline quickly. And sometimes starting with the punchline can
Yeah.
really draw an audience in. So starting with the conclusion, let me tell you about the time where I did the following thing that helped my boss do this better. And they'll say, wow, what did you do that helped your boss do something better? And then you say, well, what was happening was, fill in the context. So and because my boss recognized this or someone needed to get something done, someone told me about this, I did the following thing. That's the action. And then as a consequence, here's what we gained from the work that I did. Done and done. Quick and concise and digestible, because we all have to assume our audiences are human and have limited, they can't hold 20 minutes of a story in their head. They can hold a few minutes of a story or 30 seconds, and they can always ask you for more details.
Well, that brings up an interesting thought, that when I Googled what is the average amount of time that employers or recruiters look at the resume, and it's 6 seconds. And that's just basically a glance in my mind. So I think that, what are they looking for in terms of, we know they're looking for basic skills that are going to fit, but where you're in an entry level job, it's kind of beyond the skill set. It's things that aren't there on the resume. Um, any thoughts on being able to stand out in that 6 second scan, other than making sure that you're using basic keywords to hit the things that are coming out in the job description?
It's a really good question, and I think it's something that people at every level overlook. The job posting itself will have requirements, qualifications, if you will, and preferred qualifications. That first set is non-negotiable. So it might be something like must be a junior in an accredited school with the following majors, with intention to graduate in the following 1 to 2 years. That might be a qualification. And the thing is, that qualification might show up on the application in something called a knockout question. So this kind of takes two pathways. I know you're sort of asking what's the way to do this with a resume, but just as a footnote, you might find this in the knockout questions where they say, are you a junior in college, or that at an accredited 4-year or 2 or 4-year university or whatever it is. And if you answer no, you won't even get a look, because you did not meet the minimum qualifications if you happen to be a sophomore or you're a graduating senior. Maybe they don't want to hire a graduating senior for an internship, whatever the reason might be. So looking at those things very carefully can save you a lot of angst. because you can safely exclude the ones you simply don't meet those basic qualifications for. As far as the resume goes, making sure that the skills that you're describing, the things that you want your audience to know, again, are being described in context, and that your stories, your challenge, action, result stories, are not paragraphs. They're a handful of lines, maybe 4 lines max. Um, they don't expect you to have, um, 50 of those. So if you give
Yeah.
3 or 4 really good statements, that's going to catch their attention. And if you give enough white space in between, meaning you don't have to have just a one-page resume if you have plenty of space, then it's going to be way easier for your audience to read. And don't go for that, 9-point text. Um, no one can
Yes,
read that.
please. It's got to be 12 point for people like me.
Well, depending on the typeface, actually, it can be anywhere from 10 to I'd say 11, probably.
Yeah.
But 12 is good.
Yeah.
And good space in between them, as long as it's readable. If you print it out and it looks good, it's not that they're going to be printing it out, but you'll get a good sense of what it looks like. Um, maybe ask one of the adults in your life if they think it's readable, and
Yeah.
and follow kind of what they think, because that's probably the the equivalent of the person who's going to be reviewing what you're putting out there. Um,
Meaning, read between the lines. The person this is probably reviewing your resume is much older than you and may require glasses to read it. So think about that.
well, and it's a kindness too. Uh,
Yeah.
and if we get away from the fact that your resume doesn't have to be one page, then you have the space to do what you need to do.
Yeah. And what about hard and soft skills? I mean, it's easy to obviously list your hard skills. It's harder to list your soft skills. Do you actually recommend listing soft skills on a resume, or do you wait and recommend that's part of the narrative or the story that you're telling when you're in an interview?
So the reason I would say to put them in well, in your interview too, but in the stories that you tell on your resume, is because your audience will want to know how long you have those skills, and it shows up by the dates on the experience. I just learned this. So let's say you're looking for somebody who knows Google Ads. Let's say
Yeah.
the hiring team is looking for somebody who knows Google Ads. A skill by itself might tip them off to ask more questions. But if you have it as the 4 months between the end of school in the spring and the beginning of the fall term, then they know you have 4 months of this particular expertise. And as you move through your career, you'll have 2 years of something and 5 years of something, which gives them way more information. As far as the soft skills go, the same kind of principle holds, but the descriptions are a little bit different and they're a little bit more subtle, because it might be something like collaborated on a team with 2 senior, uh, senior managers, one marketing assistant, and 2 interns. And it shows the scope of what your collaboration looked like and your ability to work within a team. So taking direction from somebody, or influencing someone's decision, or training somebody on something that, even though someone's an intern, they might have a lot of experience with and someone else might not. That says a lot about how you interact with people.
So my last couple of questions are probably a little bit more I don't know, controversial, but there are different approaches, right? And the first question is, what is your opinion about interests and adding interests onto a resume?
Interests. They can be pluses, they can be minuses. And it really depends on the unknowable, which is what your audience thinks. So if you know something about your audience, and let's say they talk about being a marathon runner, or even a casual runner, that's something about who they are. And if that's who you are too, you might talk about in a more concrete way, being a casual runner of X miles per week, or that if you're on the track team, talk about being on the track team. This becomes an icebreaker of sorts. But let's say you don't know anything about them and you say you're a skydiver. They might think that's really cool, or they might think you're an incredible risk taker and that's just not our company culture.
Yeah.
And so you just don't know. I would say if you have room, if you have a little bit of space left at the bottom, consider it, but I wouldn't say it's a must have.
Agreed. Agreed. All right, let's move on to graphic resumes. Resumes with pictures, resumes with graphics, resumes with colors, for colors. What we kind of differ on this one. Tell me a little bit about what your perception is of any other resume that isn't your standard black and white single space resume.
So there's two pieces to this. One is how busy tending and how messy something looks versus how beautiful it looks. The other is the technical aspect of building the content. So using some of the design tools that are out there, even the most common ones, can trip somebody up because text boxes don't always, even though they look right on the page, they don't always load in the order you expect them to load.
Mm.
So that's the technical aspect. And for somebody who's going into a graphic oriented role, they might want to have something that showcases how well they know how to do what they do, maybe in the Adobe Suite or using Canva or one of those things. But this is something that they'd have to really be careful about. And the way to test it is to do in the PDF form, do a select all and then paste into a text, like a notepad, and see what order things show up. And I think people will be surprised at how mixed up stuff just is because we build things the way we build them, piece by piece and bit by bit, all around the page. So I don't think that you and I differ as much as maybe we were speaking about, I don't know, the last time we spoke, in that people going for these visually oriented roles should be able to showcase their creativity
Yes.
using color and in a judicious way, in a way that adds to the design, is wonderful. Please do it. Make it look nice. Don't use a photo. Don't use a photo of you because people will probably exclude your resume for the purposes of not appearing biased, whatever that may be. Just don't want that.
So definitely don't use a photo. You think that's,
Yeah, it's weird because on LinkedIn, the photo lends credibility to the profile.
yeah.
On resumes, it's just really not done. Um, but still make sure that your resume reads like a resume. And feel free to add a link to your portfolio where your design chops should shine, and be as vibrant as you want, as fits your energy on your portfolio, but keep your resume readable. So
And
are we aligned? Are we on the same page?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Again, coming from the advertising world, I like seeing something that's designed well and clean with, personal branding on there and a photo. To
And
me,
a photo.
that's appealing because it shows out. It's different versus a general black and white. But everyone has a different opinion, and I know with AI and a lot of rules and regulations at different large companies, I can see where that could be a hindrance. So I'll go with your recommendation because you're the expert.
But I appreciate your perspective coming from the advertising world. And I do think creativity matters. And there's so many ways that an individual can be creative. Choose custom fonts or customize the fonts, design your own fonts and use them and
Yeah.
talk about that. Use color schemes that are across all of your branding on your portfolio site, on your printed materials and your business card and all that stuff. I think there's so many ways that where you can absolutely meet in the middle and not run afoul of, as you say, the sort of the rules and the regulatory reasoning that affect, in many cases, some of the companies these kids might be applying to.
Got it. Now let's switch over to resumes versus LinkedIn. Do you feel like the points that you make on your resume are the same points that you make on LinkedIn? Or do you feel that more your resume should be more detailed and your LinkedIn is just kind of like the highlights reel?
This is like a question akin to how long is a piece of string? There's lots of ways to do this. For newcomers to the work world, meaning students in college or students in their first roles, the resume and LinkedIn profile can very well be the same thing. I don't think anyone would look askance at that. I think it would be wise to check your data on LinkedIn just to make sure you're not revealing private company data. Nobody should
Yeah.
ever do that. But if a student copied over their profile into LinkedIn, that would probably be okay. And then there's other fields in LinkedIn that make sense to fill in, and that would have to be done separately. To take it up a notch, use the space to tell a story, which includes the things that are in your resume, but it's more of a narrative approach, or bulleted approach. I guess it could be, there's so many ways to do this. I think the only wrong way to do it is to have nothing in your LinkedIn profile. You can't be found for anything. You can't be understood for the value that you bring to a future employer. There's nothing there to make a judgment about. So make sure you have at least something. And if copying your resume is the easiest way, the most expedient way to do that today, go for it. And as you progress through your career and you need something more robust, you can make those choices down the road.
Any final tips that you have for writing resumes?
Think about what you want. Look for positions online that speak to the kinds of things you want to be doing, and imagine that they are each in their own circle in a Venn diagram. Write your resume to the middle of those, that shaded part in the middle, and
Yeah.
then the quote unquote tweaking of your resume is no time at all because you've already done all the thinking, you've already done all the strategizing, and you can apply relatively quickly. And if you see a job that you like that is not in that circle or even touching that circle in the Venn diagram, figure out why you like it and decide if it's cool but not relevant today, then let it go. If it's a whole new pathway, then that opens up a whole new direction for you and you have to rethink all the stuff you've done already.
That is very valuable insights. Well, thank you, Amy. If anyone wants to learn more about Amy Adler, I will put her contact information, her LinkedIn, her social media links in the notes of twomarketingmoms.com. Thank you so much for joining me today, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Take care.